The offseason has officially begun for the Detroit Lions, and while many teams around the NFL are scrambling to make dramatic roster changes, Detroit's early moves tell a slightly different story. This is a franchise that believes its foundation is already strong. Instead of tearing things down or rebuilding major pieces, the Lions are carefully reinforcing key areas while keeping the core of the roster intact. And the first move of the offseason perfectly reflects that philosophy. One of the earliest decisions made by the organization was extending an exclusive rights free agent tender to kicker Jake Bates. At first glance, it may not look like a headline-grabbing move. Kickers rarely dominate offseason conversations. But for a team like Detroit, which has built a reputation for attention to detail and roster stability under head coach Dan Campbell and general manager Brad Holmes, locking in a reliable specialist is part of a bigger strategy. The ERFA tender essentially gives Bates a one-year deal at the league minimum salary, which is just over $1 million. Because Bates has fewer than 3 accrued seasons in the NFL, the Lions retain complete control over his rights. If he wants to play in 2026, it will be in Detroit. And given his body of work over the past 2 seasons, there is very little reason to believe either side would want to move in a different direction. Bates' performance in 2025 was slightly inconsistent compared to his breakout 2024 season. After converting nearly 90% of his field goals during his first year with Detroit, his accuracy dipped to just under 80% this past season. On paper, that looks like a decline. But the context tells a much more nuanced story. 5 of his 7 misses came from beyond 50 yards, which are attempts many teams treat as long-shot opportunities rather than guaranteed points. Inside 40 yards, Bates remained perfect, converting every attempt he was given. That kind of reliability in the short and intermediate range is exactly what teams look for in a kicker. When the offense stalls in scoring territory, the expectation is simple: take the 3 points. Bates delivered on those situations consistently. Even more encouraging for Detroit was his improvement on extra points and his adaptation to the league's new kickoff structure, which requires precision placement rather than raw power. Special teams coordinator Dave Phipp made it clear throughout the season that the coaching staff believes Bates is a high-level player despite occasional misses from distance. Phipp even suggested that if Bates were ever released, multiple teams would immediately claim him. That level of confidence from the coaching staff matters because special teams often becomes the hidden difference in tight games, especially in the postseason. But while the Lions are comfortable with their kicker situation, the rest of the roster presents more complicated questions. One of the biggest areas of focus heading into the offseason is the offensive line, which has long been the identity of this Detroit team. For several seasons now, the Lions have built their offense around physical dominance in the trenches. When that unit is healthy and operating at full strength, Detroit becomes one of the most balanced offenses in the league. However, maintaining that dominance requires constant investment. Offensive lines age quickly, depth evaporates faster than expected, and injuries can derail even the strongest units. That reality has pushed the Lions front office to explore multiple avenues for reinforcement, including the possibility of making a trade for a starting caliber center. The center position is arguably the most important spot on the offensive line outside of left tackle. The center controls protection calls, identifies defensive fronts, and ensures communication across the entire line. For a team that relies heavily on timing and rhythm in both the run and pass game, having a stable presence at center can make the difference between a smooth offense and a chaotic one. Several potential trade targets around the league could fit what Detroit is looking for. One name that stands out is Jolt Frohold of the Arizona Cardinals. Frohold has quietly developed into a dependable starter, beginning every game for Arizona over the past 3 seasons. He is not the flashiest player in the league, but he brings consistency, durability, and a strong understanding of offensive line play. What makes Frohold especially intriguing for Detroit is his connection to Lions offensive coordinator Drew Petzing. Coaches often value familiarity when evaluating potential acquisitions. A player who already understands the philosophy and communication style of a coordinator can transition more smoothly into a new system. That type of continuity is extremely valuable for a team trying to contend immediately rather than rebuild. Another potential option is John Michael Schmitz of the New York Giants. Schmitz has delivered solid but unspectacular performances since entering the league. His pass protection has improved significantly, and he allowed very few pressures last season. More importantly, he also has ties to Lions passing game coordinator Mike Kafka, who previously worked with him in New York. Then there is Ryan Neuzil of the Atlanta Falcons, who quietly posted one of the highest pro football focus grades among centers last season. His run blocking in particular stands out, which would align perfectly with Detroit's offensive philosophy. If the Falcons hesitate to extend him long-term, the Lions could attempt to acquire him before he reaches free agency next year. Perhaps the most ambitious option would involve trading for Aaron Brewer of the Miami Dolphins. Brewer had an outstanding season, ranking among the very best centers in football according to advanced metrics. However, acquiring a player of that caliber would likely require a significant draft pick, which could complicate Detroit's long-term roster planning. This brings us to a critical moment in the Lions' team-building strategy. If you're enjoying this deep dive into Detroit's offseason plans, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Throughout the offseason, we'll continue breaking down every roster move, every potential trade target, and every strategy the Lions could use to stay among the NFL's elite contenders. Beyond the center position, the Lions are also evaluating their depth at offensive tackle. While star tackle Penei Sewell remains one of the most dominant players in football, the situation on the opposite side carries some uncertainty. Veteran left tackle Taylor Decker has confirmed that he will return for the 2026 season, but the coaching staff has acknowledged that his workload may need careful management. That reality has pushed Detroit to explore the free agent market for experienced depth options. The Lions are not necessarily searching for a long-term starter. Instead, they want a player capable of stepping in during emergencies or potentially starting games if injuries occur. One of the most intriguing names already visiting Detroit is Jedrick Wills. Once considered a cornerstone prospect after being selected 10th overall in the 2020 draft by the Cleveland Browns, Wills' career has been complicated by injuries. After a promising start, knee issues and lingering complications limited him to just a handful of games across multiple seasons, eventually leading him to sit out the entire 2025 season to fully recover. Despite those setbacks, the potential that made Wills a top prospect has not disappeared. His athletic profile coming out of University of Alabama was exceptional, and when healthy, he demonstrated strong pass-blocking ability. For a team like Detroit, which already has established starters, signing Wills on a low-risk contract could represent a classic upside play. If Wills regains his form, the Lions could gain a starting-caliber tackle without committing massive resources. If he struggles or injuries persist, the financial investment would remain minimal. That type of calculated gamble is exactly the kind of move successful front offices make during championship windows. But perhaps the most fascinating storyline surrounding Detroit's roster isn't a specific player at all. It's the injury history that shaped the team's recent seasons. According to advanced analytics tracking something called adjusted games lost, the Lions endured one of the most injury-riddled defenses in modern NFL history over the past 2 seasons. The 2024 and 2025 defenses both ranked among the 12 most injured units in the league since 2001. In fact, the 2025 defense was the second most injured defense in the entire NFL during that span. Players like Levi Onwuzurike, Josh Paschal, and Ennis Rakestraw Jr. missed the entire season. Key contributors such as Kirby Joseph, Marcus Davenport, and Terrion Arnold also lost significant time. Even foundational players like Alam McNeil and Brian Branch dealt with extended absences. And yet, despite those staggering losses, the Lions still managed to remain competitive. In 2024, they produced an incredible 15-2 record. In 2025, even with the injuries piling up again, they still finished above .500. That resilience says everything about the culture inside Detroit's locker room. Under Dan Campbell, the Lions have built a team defined by toughness and depth. Players step into bigger roles when injuries strike. Coaches adjust schemes to fit available personnel. And the front office continuously hunts for undervalued talent to fill roster gaps. The question now is whether a healthier season combined with smart offseason additions could push Detroit from contender to champion. If the Lions finally experience average injury luck while maintaining their physical style of play, they could become one of the most dangerous teams in the entire NFL. Because when you look at the foundation already in place, a dominant offensive line, explosive offensive weapons, and a defense that continues to grow under adversity, it becomes clear that Detroit is not far away from reaching the ultimate goal. The Lions have spent years building this roster brick by brick. Now the challenge is refining the final details that could turn a great team into a Super Bowl winner. And if you want to stay updated on every Lions move throughout the offseason, every trade rumor, every free agent target, and every roster battle heading into training camp, make sure to subscribe to the channel and drop a comment below with your own trade ideas for Detroit.